Hi everyone, my name is Brian Harold Taylor, and I'm a character designer, illustrator, and animator who specializes in making fantasy, adventure, comics, and films. So today, I'm inking this character of mine. His name is Simian Samurai, which I know sounds ridiculous, but that's why I love it, so I'm going with it. Anyhow, I'm going to share the process with you as I go. So what I'm doing now is I'm finalizing his character design before I move on to a turnaround for him. And then after that, I will attempt to build him for animation. I'm doing all of this on my iPad in a very cool program called Procreate. As you can see, I also have a reference window open down below with an older illustration of the character, which I'm referring to as I work so that I can get him on model. So my goal with this design is all about further strengthening all of his underlying shapes, as well as simplifying him slightly so he'll be easier to work with in animation. So, okay, a little about me and also this channel and what it's going to be about. If I had to explain myself in one word, it would be that I am a storyteller. I've always been telling stories since I was a kid. And ever since then, I've been telling stories visually in one form or another, whether that's comics or animation. So over the last few years, I've created a number of IPs, each one with a compelling story to tell, with fun, appealing characters, and the worlds that these stories take place in. I'm working now to get these stories out in some form. So when developing my quote-unquote brand of stories that I want to tell, I've been essentially asking myself, what would my 8 to 12-year-old self want to see? You know, what would I think was awesome? And then I make that thing. But obviously, you know, I also need to ask myself, how can I make this story compelling for adult me too? And that usually comes down to the story being much more complex and character-oriented, something that I can get into as an adult. So ultimately, these stories, whether they end up being short films or comics, will be something that if you're an adult, you can enjoy, but they're going to be good for kids too, right? So I hope that all makes sense. Anyhow, so like I said, I'm really interested in storytelling and what makes an engaging story tick. I mean, I think we've all seen movies where you can tell that you're supposed to be feeling something, but yet you don't, right? Versus there are other films or moments in films where the filmmakers do their job right, and you do feel something and you're moved in some way. You experience something visceral that changes you in some way or affects you in some way emotionally. And I'm always very interested in trying to understand why one works versus why the other doesn't. I also love the construction of stories, whether that's looking at it through the lens of the hero's journey or through some other structural device like Save the Cat. I've read all of those books on story structure. I think there's a lot of cool stuff you can learn from them. My personal favorite book on the subject is called Invisible Ink, which is by Brian McDonald. So if you're looking for one book that I would suggest that you read, it's going to be that one. In fact, I plan to do a video on it in the future. So yeah, my hope with this YouTube channel is that we can delve deep into this kind of stuff, like storytelling and how to make your own stories. And then simultaneously, we're also going to be going into character design, animation, and comics knowledge. And whatever I have to share on those subjects, I'm going to be going into that as well, because I'm super passionate about that kind of stuff. And if you're like me, maybe you're an animation nerd or a comics nerd. If so, this is a place for you. Depending on how things go, I'll ultimately be starting my own little projects, whether they be comics or animation, but I'm going to be sharing my process with you guys as I try to figure out how to make my own comics or animation, trying to figure out how to make it as a storyteller. I'm going to be sharing every step of the journey with you guys. And if you guys are interested in the same thing, follow along. You know, we'll figure it out together. So anyway, that's down the road. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. I guess that about does it for today's video. I hope you got something useful out of this, or that it inspired you in some way. So yeah, if this is the kind of content that you're interested in as well, and you'd like to know more about this kind of thing, or just hear somebody's thoughts on these kind of subjects, then definitely like and subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about any part of this video so I can make things better tailored to what you might want to know about. Finally, just a quick shout out about 2 things. The first is my art book, The Art of Brian Harold Taylor, which is currently available on Amazon.com. It collects all of my art up to about 2020 or so. It has lots of cool illustrations, character designs, some comic pages, lots of stuff. The second is my Patreon. I am on Patreon, and I'm sharing all of my art projects and videos, including these videos, early. So think of it as a subscription pass to everything that I am creating. Links to both my Patreon and my art book are available in the video description. And with that, I'll go ahead and say, see ya.